My first question to you is based on the response you offered to Pierre Poilievre's statement in the House of Commons. Why is the fight you want with the Conservatives about taxing the rich?
My focus is not on the Conservatives. My focus is on Canadians. And our budget today was about meeting the moment for Canadians. It was about fairness. It was about saying Canadians have real needs right now. They need more homes built faster. They need life to be more affordable. They need us to invest in the economic capacity of the country. They need us especially to do it for fairness for younger Canadians who are struggling to get ahead. And they need us to do it in a fiscally responsible way. That is the plan that we put forward today. And it's going to be up to the Conservatives to say whether they support it or not.
But the focus that you drew in your response was very much, for example, on the new tax, the changes to capital gains tax. And I'm wondering, did you need to even introduce those changes if you had acknowledged that the housing crisis was what it was at an earlier juncture? Would you need to be spending so much on increasing the supply if you had realized perhaps earlier that you could have deflated demand to better impact prices and not raise taxes in any way?
Canada is a growing country, and I think that is a great thing. I think as a country, we have been under-investing in housing for a generation. So I am really glad that our government is investing massively in housing, is investing massively in the infrastructure to support housing. And I am glad to see provinces and municipalities and also the private sector and not-for-profits really getting involved. I think it's great that Canada is growing. It's just really important to be sure that a growing country has enough homes, that we have homes for young Canadians, that we have homes for new Canadians. That is about fairness, and that's what we're doing.
Wasn't that your government's job over the last 8 years? When you say for generations governments have been under-investing, doesn't that make your own government culpable?
Our government has been focused on housing and focused on infrastructure since we first formed government. The challenge is more acute now. It's more acute in Canada, and it is more acute around the world. And we're stepping up, and we're recognizing that. I think the really important thing to take away from this budget is we recognize that this is a pivotal moment for young Canadians. It's a pivotal moment for millennials. It's a pivotal moment for Gen Z. In our pre-budget tour going across the country, I've heard from so many people, young Canadians themselves, but as much their parents and grandparents saying, I want my kid and my kid's friends to be able to afford their own home. I think we all believe that, and we know it takes an activist government which is investing, and crucially, it takes a government that's prepared to lead the charge and change the mindset of the country. Cut through the red tape, get municipalities to accept gentle zoning. That is all happening. I'm very, very optimistic.
Right, but why weren't you prepared and willing to do that in 2021, for example, when the average price of a home was already 97% higher than 2015? Were you talking to people in Toronto in the age group that you're referencing 2 years ago who thought they could afford a home there, or in Vancouver who thought they could afford a home then? Why didn't you try and meet the moment then to avoid having to spend as much as you are now to try and meet the moment now?
Well, 2021, of course, was still peak COVID. So the
economic kept going up in 2022.
No, so yeah, but you referred to 2021. That was peak COVID. There were a lot of distortions through that period, and some of those economic distortions are part of the reason that housing is such a challenge. I think the important thing is to be meeting the moment now. The important thing is to be doing everything we can, to pulling every lever, to pressing every button to get more homes built. That is what our government is doing. Our government is also really focused on affordability for all Canadians, and our government is focused on investing on productivity and growth of the economy. And the way we're going to do it is pursuing fairness for all Canadians, especially young Canadians. That's the plan we presented today. I think that's what Canadians want and need.
Why are you so solely focused, I should say, on the supply side? And I'll bring it back to the issue of demand. because the portion, or the number rather, of temporary residents in this country has doubled as of January over the last 2 years. Again, not something that happened overnight, happened over the past few years. Your government has just now decided to address the temporary stream of immigration. Is there any consideration to looking to the permanent stream temporarily while the housing crisis is as acute as it is? Or is the plan solely to spend more to attempt to drive the supply of housing? Why not tackle demand in a more meaningful way?
Oh, I think that's a really good question. And I do think it's important for us to be sure that housing supply and the number of people in Canada match up. And that's why the work that Mark Miller has been doing over the past few months is so important. Let's remember, change in visa requirements for Mexicans, a cap on international students, a huge source of temporary residents, and a cap on the number of temporary residents. I think that there is more work to do when it comes to temporary residents, particularly when it comes to temporary foreign workers. So I absolutely agree
is it fair to say your government will do more on that side?
I absolutely agree that that is important. I do, though, want to say more broadly, I believe in a growing Canada. I think that that is a strength of our country, that we're able to grow our population. That is a huge strength of ours when it comes to the demographic challenge so many countries are facing. We need to be sure that our housing supply and our population match up. And I think that is what our government is absolutely focused on doing. That is what Canadians want and need.
Do you feel, I guess, some responsibility that your government didn't ensure that was the case over the past few years, therefore somewhat casting doubt on the value of immigration as you espouse it and as so many Canadians have believed? We show polls. You can see polls. The view of immigration has wavered, has changed from the steadfast way in which Canadians believed it did contribute to the economy and the fabric of our country over the years. And that is mostly due to the fact that they believe the immigration that your government presided over has negatively impacted their ability to afford a home.
I think that Canadians recognize what you and I are just talking about, what is just common sense, which is we need to be sure that the supply of homes is keeping up with the people in Canada, and we need to be sure that there are homes for young Canadians to live in and to buy. I also think the vast majority of Canadians welcome immigration. They welcome it because of the benefits to our society and the benefits to our economy. But what this budget is really focused on is about fairness for all Canadians, and really delivering the promise of Canada to young Canadians. And you're right to focus on housing. That is central. So is affordability. So is investments in economic growth. That's what we're doing.
I'm glad that you brought up the issue of delivering, because my final question is around why Canadians should trust your government to execute on the plan you're laying out in this budget. You've been in power for 8 years. I'm thinking of other measures around housing that you've introduced. For example, the loan program that you topped up most recently with $15 billion to build apartment buildings. That program was announced in 2017. You've lent out $18 billion, 11,000 apartments in 7 years have been constructed. What about your record should give Canadians assurance that you will execute on this plan?
I'll give you a couple of examples. One example is our fiscal guideposts. I set those out in the fall economic statement. I am sure you interviewed a lot of people who were very skeptical afterwards, who were very skeptical ahead of this budget that we would hit the mark. We have hit every single mark with some room. So we take delivery extremely seriously. Another thing I'll give you as an example is early learning and childcare. I remember when we put that forward in the 2021 budget, I had so many conversations, including actually conversations with you, where people said, "Great plan, Minister, but you guys are never going to pull it off." Well, we are delivering. There is a lot more work to do on early learning and childcare, but across the country, fees are down by at least 50%, and in 7 provinces and territories, it's already $10 a day. We can get big things done in Canada, and we are committed to doing it.
And I'm not intimating in any way that you haven't done significant things, and I think, for example, the daycare example is a good one. The cost for a lot of Canadians has gone down, but the wait list to get in is growing at a rapid rate. Many people in this city, for example, can't get into a daycare spot for another 8 or 9 months. And that brings me back to my original point, which is Can Canadians actually have confidence that you're going to execute? One of the lines you've been saying over the past 2 weeks is Canada feels like a place where things aren't working. After 8 years in office, isn't that your government's fault?
What Canadians need to decide right now is, do they believe that we are living in a country where the promise of Canada can and should be open to all Canadians, particularly to young Canadians for whom it feels out of reach. We have put forward a plan to deliver for young Canadians. We believe it does require a partnership of the federal government, provinces, municipalities, private sector, public sector. We do think it takes an activist government, and we have a plan to deliver that fairness, to unlock the promise of Canada for all Canadians, especially the younger generation.
I'll leave it there, Minister. I'm out of time. I know your time is limited. Thank you for making time for us today. I appreciate it.